or you can put up your hand and say how many of you are supervisors out there, so I'll have some idea who we are talking to. So if we find that we have a mixture of students and supervisors, this will be a good forum to find out how even students felt about supervision. So so how many of you all are students? How many of you are students? You can show, either put in the chat or something, and let me know how many of you are students, and we'll have some idea, and how many are supervisors.
You mean in the group, Prof? How many of us are students, are still doing our PhD, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if some idea, do we have students as well as supervisors here? And some of them are maybe even completed students who are currently supervising. So I have some idea who I'm talking to, so I have a better understanding, So we have quite, I think the course was designed, this workshop was designed for mainly supervisors, but students are also important in understanding how supervisors function, right? As I said, that supervision is a delicate exercise. We are dealing with students at a higher level of education. Those who decide to do a PhD are always students who have already completed a number of other degrees. Some of them may have worked somewhere, some are mature students, some are interested in certain careers that you want to engage in. So the process they undergo during the education in the university for further degree some sort of forms them, sort of sets them up for what they're going to do in the future. So supervision becomes a very important thing, and the supervisor also transforming his personality and how he works, the habits he has got to the student. So the student will use the supervisor as an important index or benchmark to guide him as to how he will supervise students in the future. So these things are extremely important, in understanding that when you look at it, overall, students are actually learning from us all the time, and because of that, we have an extreme responsibility to see that we are not setting the students up to some bad habits. We are not letting them to realize that, as a supervisor, I can do what I want, and you don't have to judge me, and you have to do what you want, and what you have to, as what I tell you. So these are some of the things I want to discuss today, so that as a supervisor you feel good about what you're doing, and you will be able to have a better understanding of what supervision is all about. And many of you have got a lot of experience in supervising. Routinely, I think most supervisors in UUM have more than 5 or 10 students. Some of them have quite a large number. And in fact, the university has already decided now that if you are supervising students, you should not be taking more than 7 students any one time, as suggested by the accreditation bodies. Therefore, that we can then provide a better arrangement for students, to get the quality of supervision they need, right? So let me share the slides with you today that I want to talk about. Let me see now. So let me see, how do I do that? Can you share? I've given the slides to our. So can you just share the slides that I gave you? Can you all see the slides?
Not yet, Prof.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that going. Okay, right. All right. Okay, now share screen. I'm going to share my screen with you all. Can you see the slide now? Are you all able to see the first slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, but it's not in the play mode.
Can you see it?
Yes, Prof. Yes.
All right, good. So this is what I'm trying to do, and this thing is organized by the University Teaching and Learning Center in UUM, and they're trying to do a great job in trying to ensure the students get a good supervision as possible. So what are we trying to achieve today is, what outcomes we want after this workshop is, one, we want to be better and effective supervisors. So we want to be from where we are to a place where we are better and more effective as supervisors. And I'll tell you what is better and effective. And also to achieve graduation on time. We want students to somehow understand that you cannot be lingering in the university for so long. You cannot be taking up your time, sitting as a graduate student with luxury. You have to graduate on time. There is a time limit for graduation, and that's important, and it's got implications for everyone, for the student, for the supervisors, for the university, and for the community as a whole. So that's another outcome we want to achieve, that after this workshop we might be able to do more in ensuring the students are able to graduate on time, and I'll talk about what this time is all about. And 3 is increased capacity for undertaking research. So as universities, we are interested in increasing the capacity of the staff to do research, but we're also interested in increasing the capacity of the students who are coming in. By the time they finish up their degrees, these people will be researchers. In fact, if you are not interested in research, we are not really interested in research, then it doesn't make sense why you want to do a PhD. A PhD often leads to a research job or research-oriented kind of job, or at least some area where you will undertake research in some areas. So increasing capacity for undertaking research is the 3rd outcome. If a student undergoes PhD training or graduate training and is not able to undertake research, then we have somehow failed in our outcome in terms of training the student. So in our learning outcomes, we are also trying to see these 3 things. Okay. Any issues on that? Any questions on that? Anybody has got any issues on that? So these 3 things we are trying to achieve today through this discussion. All right, through this workshop. Anybody have got some points, you can always mention or raise a point. I'm always open to discussion. And you can always unmute your mic and say some things you want. All right. Okay. Next, the next thing we're going to do now is to look at what is graduate supervision. So the workshop content is going to depend on these areas that we want to look at. We have structured the workshop so that we want to know what is graduate supervision. Different people have got different views of what is graduate supervision. And then we want to talk a little bit about responsibilities of supervisors. What is your responsibility? And there's a lot of argument on this. How are you responsible for ensuring the student does his research and learns, right? So that part of the responsibility, is extremely important, in ensuring that students are getting what they expect from supervisors. So responsibility of supervisors is another thing we want to look at. And then we will look at learning experience and student interaction. What do you want the student to learn? What experience must the student take away from the period he was in the university being trained as a graduate student? What is the learning experience the student wants to take away? What kind of interaction do you expect from the student during the process? How is he going to interact with the supervisor and therefore learn? So this is very important, the learning experience and the student interaction. The quality of the learning experience and the quality of the interaction will determine what kind of a PhD graduate the person will be. And that has got a lot to do with also the role of the supervisor and the role of the student. So we'll look at that a little bit as one of the contents of the workshop. The next is the context and supervising skills and levels. To supervise, supervisors need certain skills. And we also have to do what level of supervision you need to give. So that's another area we want to look at in terms of context, supervising skills. We must understand that we are a developing nation. So we may not attract the best students from the world to come to our universities, but we get pretty good students from some parts of the world and also from Malaysia. But the kinds of students we get might not be the brightest students in the world, but they are interested in learning, they're interested in achieving something in their lives. So we have a context in which we are operating, and therefore supervision skills required in that context might be slightly different, right? And so we need to understand that as well. And finally, we want to look at graduate student responsibilities and learning outcomes. And how should graduate students be looking at this process, and what should be their responsibilities? Okay, so that's how we want to look at it today, so that if you leave this workshop, you will have some idea of what we have talked about and how that's going to impinge on what you're doing in your course, in your process of supervising students, and what you felt was the activity you were carrying out, this thing called supervision of students. All right. Any questions on that? Any issues you have, we can then take up along the way. Anyway, we'll have a session for questions and all at the end. And if you want anything urgent, anything's really pushing you, you need to be brought in and talked about right now, you can always tell me or post a comment or something in the chat, and we'll look at it. Okay. So that's first thing. All right. So let's move on. So let's see what is graduate supervision. So when you talk about graduate supervision, we are talking about management of a student research project. You see, students, of course, they may be doing a project together with us, but essentially it's a management of a student research project. A research project that's undertaken by a student who is in the university, who is registered as a graduate student. So it's a management of a student research project. So management is involved here. How do you manage this so that you can get the outcomes that you want? So an issue of management is extremely important here. So people must understand that supervision has got to do with management. You've got to manage the student. How you manage the student, how do you manage the relationships, how do you manage the learning process, how do you even manage the student emotions sometimes. Students get upset, student gets lonely, student gets disturbed. And so you must almost be like a father, who looks after the student and says, listen here, there's a lot of things in the world, you don't have to solve all the problems. This is what you need to do, and you will be okay if you focus on these things. So this idea of managing the student is extremely important. So we are managing a student research project. That we need to understand. We are not managing a project that's going to solve the world's problems. So people must understand that when a student comes to do a PhD, he's not essentially solving a world problem, all right, or something very big. But it's a student project. But the major aim of that exercise is a learning exercise, that a student acquires skills to be a researcher. So that's important, right? So then we will look at what are the two key factors are. The two key factors you're struggling with when you're supervising a student is timing and quality. These are two important factors, and they may not necessarily be moving in the same direction, right? Timing means you want to make sure the student succeeds in completing his studies within a certain time frame, right? And normally most universities have a cut-off time limit for students to complete their thesis or dissertation, typically 3 to 5 years for a PhD degree or more, at most 7. So we have that time limit, 3 to 5, or sometimes they are also constrained by the funding they have. You're only given a scholarship or a time or study leave for 3 years or 2.5 years or 4 years, and that's all. You have to finish it around that time. So timing is there. But you're also concerned about quality, because PhD and master's thesis must be of high quality. And recognition of this often leads to considerable time taken to complete the thesis. Why sometimes it takes more time to complete the thesis? Because we are concerned about quality. You always tell the student, no, this hasn't reached the mark. It's not there yet, okay? And the supervisor must be able to see whether the student has reached the quality or not. So that's an important part of the supervisor, to be able to see whether the thesis has reached a certain quality with the challenge of keeping it on time, right? So we are always balancing this issue between time and quality. So I want you all to, as supervisors, always focus on this, that there are two things we are struggling with: time and quality. And of course then the personality of the student, okay, the personality of the supervisor comes in, how they are going to deal with these issues. So the key factors are timing and quality, and because there's a limit to the time where you're supposed to finish your thesis and complete your education, we have to worry about the time. But at the same time, we want to ensure that there's a high quality, because this is a high level of training. A PhD is the highest level most people end up studying, and it has got to be of some high quality. and it's got to be something that will be recognized, you see, as some important piece of contribution in an area of knowledge that the student and the supervisors decided to work on, right? So it is a combined work of the student and the supervisor, and it was considered as a useful thing to work on. So that's the thing. So this idea of the balancing between timing and quality, keep that in mind. So those two things are important. Then we have the task of finishing this thesis proves to be too much for many students. Many students struggle because they start on this journey, and the task of finishing this, how do I finish this? And I've started this, I'm struggling with this, I meet my supervisor off and on, I'm not finding any solution, and I am going back every evening and sort of dismally considering myself, should I leave it or should I continue, should I get another opinion? So this task of finishing thesis proves to be too much for many students, and this is where the supervisor has a very important role to play in mentoring the student to understand that because research is something we don't know, we are doing research on something because we don't know what it is. We are trying to understand what it is. Even the supervisor is trying to learn, all right? Because if he has known everything, why is he asking you to do the work? So at a PhD level, we are doing a work that has got some element of newness, some elements of originality, some elements of a new pushing of the frontier somewhat. So there is some element of mystery there. Both the supervisor and the student doesn't really know what it is. That's why we are trying to find out. So that's a challenge, that is taking place there. So this forces to be playing. So this is what graduate supervision brings into play, a number of tensions. The tensions between time and quality, the tensions about getting the student to stay focused and complete, and also this idea about capability. Am I capable to finish? Students often feel that maybe I'm not capable, I'm not doing the right things. And sometimes students get into conflict with the supervisors. Our supervisors are asking them to do too much. Are they trying to push them, over the hill, over the rift, So these issues come into play. So that's part of an important part of graduate supervision. All right. Any questions on this? Any viewpoints that anybody likes to make? So these are important things when we talk about graduate supervision, and I hope anybody who's doing supervising a student will know that these are the key focus we want to look at if you want to ensure that students end up getting a fairly good supervision, right? So okay, so next the next thing we want to talk about is supervisor. We want to look at what is a supervisor. When you say someone is a supervisor, what do you mean by being a supervisor? So in universities, supervisor, student supervision often refers to the individual to which the student turns to for regular guidance. So the student comes to you as a supervisor for regular guidance. When he feels some problem, when he faces some issues, he can't understand something, he's not making any progress, first person he'll come to is the supervisor. So supervisor is a preference point for the student who is doing a graduate study more than anybody else. So the supervisor has got to be there. Okay, he refers to the individual to whom the student turns for regular guidance. Someone who comes and asks you often, am I on the right track? Am I doing all right? And am I writing this well? So often students are greatly disappointed with the minimum supervision they receive. So this is another issue. Often students are saying the supervisors are not giving them the level of supervision they expected. All right. So this is an area of great controversy, because some people are saying that graduate students should be supervised very lightly. There should be very light supervision, and students are supposed to do most of the work themselves. That is what a PhD is all about. That is right. I mean, I don't disagree with that. But in contexts where we have students who are coming from various backgrounds, and also in places where we may not attract the best graduate students in the world or the most competitive graduate students, supervision may take another angle. The supervisor, if he wants to get the student to make something useful, supervisors may have to do more than just minimum supervision. And that's what I say in the context of where we are functioning, in the place where we are functioning, we often need to consider that it's not just minimum, It's not a light touch supervision, but something more that needs to be provided for, especially students coming from developing countries, in countries where their early education wasn't really up to mark. Sometimes the undergraduate or the masters they did not provide the kind of strong building blocks for them. So, and then certain lifestyles or certain habits also within them. So this light supervision that is expected from a culture where people are more independent, people are exposed to doing things on their own, and you are responsible for what you do. Culture might not often work in a context we are functioning. So we need to be careful about that. And this is often a problem because many of us were trained in the US or UK or Western countries, Australia, European countries. We tend to believe that it's your job, you do it. I will just look at it and just give you some some guidelines. Those kinds of approaches does work well in cultures where students understand what it means to be your work, your responsibility. But in cultures where people are used to getting more support and help, it might be a shock and often creates conflicts between supervisors and students. And this is something we need to address carefully, because our objective is to transform the student into a researcher who will be capable of standing on his own and define what he has learned and how he has used these things anywhere in the world. So that's a challenge, and I think that's something we need to look at carefully, right? The others is supervisors are seen as people of much experience and wisdom. Students come to us because they think that we have what you call experience and wisdom. Wisdom means wisdom in the sense that you are able to spot and tell the student this is going to work or this is not going to work. This idea of wisdom is that you know things that people don't normally know. That's wisdom. Or through your experience you understand that you don't have to go through the struggle. I already know what that is. So I'm telling you from my wisdom, from my past experience, this won't work. So supervisors are often seen as people of much experience and wisdom, and therefore there are certain expectations from students that they want to see that it is there. The supervisor does demonstrate some experience because of his expertise and all that. He has some experience, and he also got some wisdom from supervising many other students and from functioning as a researcher for many years in his life. So that's important. Supervisors need to demonstrate that also, that he has got that, and the student can somewhat have some dependence on that if I'm going somewhere wrong, the supervisor will guide me, and get me there. So that's the part on supervisors seen as people of much experience and wisdom. Then living up to the expectations is important. So as supervisors, living up to that expectation is important, because if a supervisor loses that, if a student feels that my supervisor doesn't really show that he knows the stuff, or he doesn't seem to demonstrate an experience or wisdom, then we have a problem there. And the student feels that why am I becoming an apprentice under this supervisor when he cannot really guide me, or he is not interested in guiding me, or he doesn't really demonstrate the capacity to do that. So these things are important, right? This idea that you as a supervisor is the first point the student turns to, and often students are disappointed with minimum supervision. This is often reported everywhere. And supervisors are seen as people of much experience and wisdom, so we need to take that as a value that we have from students and see that this value does mean something to the student, right? And then living up to the expectation is important. Living up to the expectation of the student that you have some wisdom there, you have some experience there, that's going to help the student succeed in what he's trying to do is important. All right, any questions on that so far? So there's one question: is quality in supervision likely to be subjective between supervisor and potential assessor? Are there any specific factors, guidelines to consider, especially for young new supervisors? Okay, so this is a question from BY. I don't know who's BY. Baya Bazir Yusuf, to everyone. Baya Bazir Yusuf. Okay, he's asked me: is quality in supervision likely to be subjective between supervisor and potential assessors? Are there any specific factors, guidelines to consider, especially for young, new supervisors? So I say what is quality is also controversial, but there are certain guidelines as to what is quality. So the quality of supervision between supervisor and potential assessors is that there is this research is science-based, so there is a methodology that needs to be followed, and so the assessment will be based on whether good science has been followed or not. So if there's good science there, that's one important assessment of quality. How much of good science is there in the process of identifying the problem, the process of finding the scope, defining the scope of the study, in the process of establishing the appropriate methodology to assess the problem, and in the process of doing the analysis in the right way so that you are addressing the issues and finding answers. So that's where the quality of supervision comes in, because the student will have the skills because he has studied, he has been trained to do the research, but using that quality, the quality of the training is that the supervisors make sure that he's applying it correctly, that the science that was taught to him or her in the process is applied correctly, and there are no major flaws or errors in the way the work was done. So that's what the quality often comes in. The quality of supervision comes from the fact that the final product, the final product has a certain quality that is agreeable to scientists, others, because this will finally be put to a potential assessor, an external assessor, who would basically examine whether the science is good. Is the science behind this study good? And can it stand scrutiny? Can it stand analysis by others, right? So that's what I try to say, right? Anything else? All right, yeah. Okay, any other person have any problem at this point? So anybody who find what I've been saying to be useful so far in supervision? All right. So far it's clear. You understand. You can hear clearly and follow what I'm saying. All right. So I hope that's happening. Okay. So then let's move on. So we have talked about supervisor. Next we are going to talk about is what is the role of supervisor. What is the role of supervisor then? Okay, we come to the next important point, because we've been talking about supervisor as an important person who student turns to all the time. So what is the role of supervisor? So one is getting the student to understand and undertake research. So you need to make sure the student understands what he's getting into and undertake research. So remember that this is a research degree, often a higher degree is a research degree. So an important part is a research part. So how do you get the student to understand and undertake the research? So this is where the interaction with the supervisor and the student has to go on in a continuous way, so that there is a progress in the way the student understands what he's doing. The student is able to progressively improve himself along the way and focus his work so that he understands what he's doing, and then he's able to undertake the research in a way that's acceptable for how it's going to be assessed on the basis of science. So getting the student to understand and undertake research is one of the important role of the supervisor. So if you cannot get the student to understand things and to undertake the research properly, then you would have failed. And of course the outcome will be bad as well, because the student will not be able to produce a really good thesis or a product that will be valued as useful. All right, and he may even fail. This is something that I like to emphasize. As a supervisor, you supervise a student, you don't want the student to fail at the end of their 3 or 4 years of spending time in the university, and also being a person who's of a mature age, to end up not completing a dissertation. So this getting the student to understand and take research is very crucial in ensuring that the student moves on to achieve what he wants. Second is you need to develop certain criteria for the creation of capable researchers. So the supervisor is trying to create criteria, for the creation of capable researcher. How am I going to make this student at the end of the period as a capable researcher? Which means he will be able to undertake independent research. He will be able to formulate research problems, discuss with people what the issue is, find relevant literature that he can read and understand, and develop the kind of methodology he needs to solve the problem, and able to write up a report that makes sense, in terms of his flow, in terms of the tying up all these analyses together. So that is what a supervisor should be able to develop certain criteria for the creation of capable research. So this criteria is often has to do with the student fully understanding how do you develop a problem, how do you identify a problem, how do you find the work done by others that are relevant to you, how do you actually go to this other work and read and see, okay, this work is relevant to what I'm doing, this work is not. How do you sift through all the material and use past research to help you, and how do you find an appropriate methodology to analyze the problem. So this is what your criteria for creation of capable research is, and this is where you set up some routines. How often should you come and see me? So how often do you all do students meet you as supervisors? What's the general average time students meet supervisors? Once a week, once a fortnight, once a month? Please share with me some points. How often? How often do students meet you, or how often do you ask students to meet you? If you don't have many graduate students, you may ask them to meet you once a week. If you have many graduate students, then you might want to meet them, once a fortnight, because you cannot meet with all of them on a regular basis every week, because it could be quite a problem. So again, some people say it depends on the stage of research, and depending on the current progress, what they're making. But it's important to get students to meet you regularly, because it keeps the rapport with the supervisor. It also puts some kind of responsibility on the student. When students are allowed to come and meet you very regularly, they develop certain habits that are not conducive to completing the dissertation. This is what we have already found. Students who meet with their supervisors more regularly are able to solve the problems better, and also often able to complete their work on time, and they are also able to make more efficient progress that doesn't take too much time. They don't have to sit on something for months before something moves or some development takes place. So at least once a fortnight is a recommended time that a student meets you at least once a fortnight and tells you what is done, why it's done, and how the work has gone through. So that's an important part. Okay. And you can have, like some people say, a WhatsApp group with my students. We text regularly and meet online when needed. So that's another. All the advances that are made now in technology also helps, because we can now be in contact with students all the time. That's also other problem, because as supervisors we can't manage students texting us or WhatsApping us anytime they like, because we are also humans. We have many responsibilities. You are teaching, you are working on a committee levels in the university, you're contributing towards so many other activities in the university. You got a home life, you got a family life, you got your children to worry about, you got personal issues to handle. So you're also a human being. So there are certain kinds of limits as to also when students can text you, when students can contact you, so that it doesn't become a barrage of a problem for supervisors. So supervisors need to also put some guidelines as to when you can see them, or when you can text them, when you can nudge a supervisor, or you can nudge a student, so that some kind of a healthy connection is maintained. So the overall rule here is what you call a good, healthy situation, which means there is good mental health between the supervisor and the student. Often I find the students lose their mental health when they're doing dissertations. They go into very toxic psychology. They feel lonely, they feel betrayed, they feel that they're not being given what they need. They feel the supervisor is not pushing or helping them as much. They expected more from the supervisor. The supervisor is not doing it. The supervisor feels that it is your work, it's not my work. Many supervisors clearly tell to the student, remember, this is your PhD, it's your work, and it doesn't matter to me whether you finish up or not. That's not a very nice word to say to students. If I'm a supervisor, it matters to me that you complete, and you complete well, and you become a very good student, a good researcher at the end of it. It is important to me because the amount of resources spent on you during the 3-4 years is massive. Society spends a lot of resources on you, the resources of the supervisor, the resources of the university, the resources of others who are interacting with you in so many different ways to help you. All these are not often accounted for. These are all great positive externalities there, that people are paying not paid for, but they are doing all these things. So it's an important thing that they understand, that the time they're spending is very, very important, and therefore we need to see some good results. So the other thing that the supervisor needs to do is that the student gets a deeper understanding of research. It's a very difficult thing. Even many of us, after many years of working, sometimes somebody asks you what is research. You get a bit, how do I actually answer this issue about what is research? Is it something that's easily explained or understood? Does it involve, really doing research for many years before I understand that? So the deeper understanding of research has got to be presented to the student. So the student actually, through the supervision process, through the psychology of the lecturer or the supervisor, understands that research is not something that is something you can cook up very fast. It is not a ready-made recipe. There's no ready-made recipe for research. The research is a philosophical exercise. It involves some philosophy. It involves discovery. It involves some kind of serendipity. Sometimes some idea suddenly comes. So there's some kind of originality there. So all these things are part of research. So the student must understand that it's not just a routine exercise that you go and do a degree and therefore you become a researcher. There's some deeper understanding of what research is and what are the things are involved. So a supervisor has got to play that role in trying to relate this to the student. That it's a deeper understanding of research that he's going to take with him or her when she finishes up the studies. So that's the role of supervisor, that he's going to pass this to the student. That at the end he also knows that research is not something shallow or something that he can just study and move on, but it's an ongoing thing. He's going to learn and go deeper and deeper as he keeps going. There's no a close situation where I've understood now research, I know what research is. No, I don't think you will understand fully research. You will keep going, because research is a continuous learning exercise. As you keep doing more research, you understand many ways of doing it, and many ways of investigating it, many ways of understanding and explaining it to people. So that's another role of the supervisor. The other thing the supervisor needs to do is trying to explain or try to ensure the student understand a systematic approach to research. A systematic way of doing it is extremely important. This is what is important in terms of getting a science going. The science behind research is extremely important, because if there's no science, then the research falls apart. If there's no real science, then the research is just like any hearsay, anything anybody can say, or anybody can say I heard from this person, or I thought this was happening there. That is not research. Research has got a systematic approach, and that systematic approach must be built into the student when he's doing the study, and that's what the science of the research is all about. And getting a strong grounding on science and the scientific approach to research. So this is, if you supervise a student, one of the key things you want to ensure that the student gets a very strong grounding on science and the scientific approach to research. So that's the philosophy. The philosophy of science is extremely important, for the student to understand that it's not just a mechanical process where you collect some data, analyze using some kind of package or some kind of software. That is not research. The thing that you can just go and collect some data and then get some statistical package or some software or do some lab experiment and then report some result, that's not really research. That's not really good strong science. So getting a strong grounding on science, what is the scientific approach, what is science, what is it all about, the idea about collecting reliable information, investigating it, testing it, repeating it. So this whole idea about trying to look for truth, search for truth, what is the truth here, and trying to find the truth is very, very important, and trying to get that instill in the student when he leaves the place will be extremely important. All right. So the other one is to lead and support the development of effective means of improving the quality of educational experience for the student. So the supervisor is also has to lead and support the development of effective means of improving the quality of educational experience for the student. Students come to the university to get an educational experience, and how that experience is given to the student, a lot depends on the supervisors and the teachers who are in the university, the professors, the lecturers, all the other people who are in the university. So this, we need to lead. We as supervisors need to lead and support the development of that quality of education experience, that when the student goes out of the university, he's able to vouch that I got a good experience in the university. I got a good quality of educational experience for the student. And this is where supervisor's role comes in, that he will go out there and say that I got a good supervisor who was dedicated, who took the trouble to educate me on science and also made sure that I become a capable researcher. So this experience has got to be instilled in the student, and the way we supervise will lead to that. So that's one of the important roles of the supervisor, that he is able to provide that, to lead and support the development of effective means of improving the quality of educational experience for the student. So I hope many of us will try and do that as supervisors, that in a way we're trying to ensure that the student has a quality of experience in undertaking research that he can carry with him. And it's also good for our institution. If our students go out and say that I got very good supervision from my supervisors, they were dedicated, they taught me science, they told me what it takes to do research, they also told me what are the problems there, what are the struggles, they were honest. So these things are very important. These are the kind of values I was talking about that we need to give our students, and we need to be committed to that, right? The other thing is that we also make sure the student to provide a forum for discussion and collaboration on creative ideas for learning development. So this is something very important. Sometimes supervisors tend to push their ideas and what they want on the student, and often they say you do this, you do that. That is not really good research or good research development. The student has to learn to provide, he must be given a platform for discussion and for collaboration with the supervisor on creative ideas. How can we study this? How is this methodology better than that methodology? How can we measure this? What is a better way of measuring this? Why is this better than the other approach? And what creative ideas, what new ideas can we bring along, to expand this further or to understand this further? So this is important. So the supervisor must be able to provide this forum for discussion. So student doesn't come to you as an inferior subordinate, but is coming there as an equal, at least at that point when he's discussing and learning, to give his ideas, and therefore to be allowed to develop himself. So if supervisors don't do that, we only push our ideas, I want this research to be done this way, because this is my research project, you're working with me, I want only this outcome. We will not produce good researchers, we will not produce good graduate students. He might end up finishing his thesis, but he will not become a good researcher. So there's an important role for the supervisors to provide a forum for discussion and for collaboration on creative ideas for learning development, right? The person has got to learn, and develop, and so that forum, if not there, that will not happen. All right. And the other thing is to enable exchange of information, dissemination of good practice. So the student will now, having gone through a good supervision, he'll be able to exchange information and dissemination of good practice in various forums, in various discussions, and he'll demonstrate the quality of supervision he got through that. The ability to exchange information and dissemination of good practice. What is good practice in doing research? It will be inbuilt into the person, right? So this is the role of the supervisor. If the supervisor can give this, then he will produce students who are researchers as good as any top university in the world, right? So if we can do that, if we can keep pushing that and understand why this is important, we will produce good research students, and we will also produce a good research community in the country, and our future development will be bright. If we don't do that, we just develop students are just followers, or more like high-level technicians. That's not research. That's not what you call a good graduate student or researcher that's been produced through the supervision process. All right. So any points here? Anybody has any things to share on this? Anything that people like to say? All right. Anybody has anything? Are you all okay? Are you all? Do you want to stretch your arms or anything? Do you want to have a bit of exercise? So we are almost in 1 hour into this session, and so I've tried to through this in this 1 hour or so, I've tried to put across to you what is the role of supervisor and what students expect, and why it's important to understand these roles so that we will be able to provide better supervision. All right. Okay. So now we want to talk about questions about prospective supervisors. So how do we choose supervisors? Who will be a prospective supervisor? So, you know, we all like to supervise students because it's also part of our progress in our career. All of us are academics. We have a career line and we want to move on. And so we know what needs to be done as a supervisor. But what about us? When students choose us, how do you be a prospective supervisor? Listen, how do you actually become good prospective supervisors, right? So what is his record in terms of student completions? One of the things is that we like to see whether this supervisor, whoever he is he making any major contribution in terms of ensuring students complete their studies. A lot of supervisors taking a lot of students and keep them on, and they are on their record for years as students. They get their weightage and they get their KPIs or whatever, but students are not completing. Students are sitting there, students are spending a lot of time, students are often irritated, they feel they're not going anywhere, time is flying, and soon they'll drop out if this doesn't happen. So record in terms of student completion is important in choosing prospective supervisors. Is a supervisor dedicated? As I told you just now earlier, time and quality. We are juggling both time and quality, right? We want to ensure that students are able to finish on time, but we also want to make sure there's quality in the product, the thesis that's produced or the research output is produced, and the student. There's capitalization in the student in terms of the quality he's going to have when he goes out. What inherent qualities he goes out with after going through this process. So what is his view of the management of students, research, and particularly his role in it? So this is what some of us come out. Some supervisors are different. I can agree there are many different kinds of supervisors. What is the view of the management students? Some supervisors, they say that it's the student's role. I mean, they have to come and see me if they want. They just have to work, and if they have any problem, they see me and I can give them some ideas. That's it. I'm not going to do much more in managing of students, particularly his role in it. Some of them do not see their role as very big. You registered as a student for a postgraduate degree. You have taken this commitment. You work on it, right? And that's important. That's all right. That's all fine. But you must understand that students are at a level where they're not fully apprehensive of what research is, what it takes for a struggle, and they are looking forward to the supervisor to provide guidance, assistance, and some nudge and push along the way. So a supervisor is feeling to say that I'm willing to do that if the student shows promise. Then that's good. If a supervisor feels that I'm willing to help the student who has shows some promise, who's got some real enthusiasm to finish, then I'm willing to help. But a student who's not interested, a student who is not really motivated, then I'm not going to take the trouble to do so much work for them. So these are the views of managing students different supervisors. Some supervisors take a very bigger role, and seeing that we are producing human capital here. They are very important, and how we help them out, ensure that they complete on time and become good researchers is extremely important. They play a bigger role. So there's a difference in people, how they roll, but generally we will expect the good supervisors will have a broader view about how they want to supervise students, not a narrow perspective that the student is his problem. He's came here and registered for a thesis. It's his problem. He's supposed to do all he can, and I'll just provide some supervision slide. I will just I'm not going to hold his hand, but I may pick him up if he's dropping somewhere or he's fallen into some pit and he cannot get out. I'll pick him out, but I'm not going to pull him along, right? So that these are the views, and some supervisors tend to be much more extreme, others are not. So here we need to understand that and see which kinds of students can be matched up with certain kinds of supervisors. How eminent is he in his specialism? Now, all of us as researchers have got our own areas of specialization or specialism, we call it. Your expertise, your knowledge, your experience comes from working on it for quite some years. Some of us invest a lot of time of our life into studying something. You might be an expert in management on certain areas. You might be expert in strategy. You might be expert in trade, or you might be expert in some area of science or education. And so this is where you get your eminence in terms of specialism. So if a student is working in that area, then it's very important to match your specialism in the area the student is working, and then there is a much better prospect of student getting better quality supervision because of the knowledge and experience that you have that's going to be transferred to the student. So this idea about checking out the specialism of the supervisor is also another important area to ensure that we are able to provide better supervision. So universities need to identify this very carefully and make a list of these specialisms and make it available to students, so the students can see that okay, this person has got expertise, and it can be demonstrated in the work the person has done over the years, the kind of quality of work he has done, the kinds of respect he has got in his community for the work he has done, the kinds of citations he has got, maybe because others are using the work he has done, his work is considered useful. If others are citing your work, in some sense they find the work useful, in some sense they feel that it's helping them to solve a problem. So these aspects are important in trying to find how to allocate students in terms of finding prospective supervisors for students. All right. So in addition to being knowledgeable about his subject, he has high competence in research methodology. Now this is an issue that comes out often. Many researchers or supervisors themselves often have difficulties in methodology. They may know knowledge about the subject, but often over time their capacity in the methodology area weakens, especially as they get older, and if they're not keeping up with their work, or they're not gone for new training in some of the developments in the area, their competence in the research methodology might have weakened. And so this is where more younger researchers or more younger lecturers are coming from universities after training. Their competence in the methodology might be strong because they're exposed to some of the new methodologies that are being taught in the universities where they came from. And so this competence in research methodology is often an issue with supervisors, and often this is where the cooperation between a senior researcher and a more younger researcher or younger supervisor who has just graduated with some better knowledge in methodology might be useful. So this knowledge, in trying to identify prospective supervisors, you need to be also careful about knowledge about the subject and the competence in research methodology, because the methodology is extremely important at the graduate level. A student is often assessed very heavily on the methodology part. A thesis actually undergoes a lot of focus on the methodology part and the problem framing part. These two areas, the problem framing and the methodology, are very key in any research examination, in any research thesis examination. They will always look at whether this was a worthy problem to study. Does it merit in the kind of research that you're talking about? And is the methodology valid? Is the methodology a frontier methodology, or is it a useful methodology that's able to examine the issues you're trying to talk about effectively? So this knowledge about the subject and the research methodology is extremely important, all right, in prospective supervisors. The other key issue is how accessible is he? Some supervisors are not accessible, not easily accessible. They're not around most of the time. They have a lot of responsibilities. They may hold very senior positions in university. They might also be sought by so many people for various committees and various conferences, and they're always on the move. And they may also have quite heavy teaching schedules. So this accessibility is also important when you allocate supervisors. That you got to ensure that supervisors are accessible in some sense, because this is a required commitment students are making when they choose a supervisor in the university. We cannot have a situation where supervisors are often not available or not accessible. Although, as some of you have said, technology has made it a lot easier now, where supervisors can be contacted through various media, WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, and all kinds of things helps you to contact your supervisor wherever he is and talk to him. So that's helped a lot. But it's important that supervisors are accessible. And if supervisors are often not accessible, then it's not a fair deal for students. However prominent a supervisor might be, but if he's not accessible to the student, that is not going to work. So these are excuse me, some of the issues to look at when we talk about prospective supervisors and how effective these supervisors can be. All right, any questions on that? Anybody has got any questions on that? Any points they'd like to raise on that? All right. Anyone has got any issues? You can always raise a point, or put a comment or chat on, so I can address it. All right. Okay. So that being that. Okay, so we talked about questions of prospective supervisors. So the next thing we're going to talk about is what you call learning. What do you call this learning experience and student interaction? So I did say that this experience that students are going to get in the university are extremely important. The learning experience, the student interaction is extremely important. Why is that so? You might find that this a PhD dissertation is actually a last occasion when the student is formally assessed on the grounds of both research competence and originality. When a student goes for his viva, that is often the very last occasion when the student is formally assessed. Formally means either pass or fail, or you make it or you don't make it. In no other occasion will this kind of formal assessment take place. After that, once you got your PhD and you start doing research, you'll be assessed by your colleagues, by your reviewers and all that when you submit research, but you're not going to be assessed on a fail or pass. You'll be assessed on where improvements can be made, and that you need to address these issues to get this published or something like that. But a PhD training or a graduate training is the last occasion when the student is formally assessed. That means you have a formal assessment on the grounds of both research competence and originality. So you are ensuring that the student has reached a stage where he has got research competence and he has got some originality. Especially at the PhD level, we are talking about some competence, ability to use certain tools of analysis effectively, ability to identify problems clearly, and also see why this problem is valuable and worthwhile of investigation, and undertaking research using science with such competence and demonstrating some originality in the way it is analyzed and the way it is reported. So that is what it's the last occasion. So it's very important, you see, in terms of student learning experience. The student, this is the last experience for the student in terms of being formally assessed, right? So that's something we need to pay attention when you're talking about learning experience student interaction. Then a major aim to present a thesis for external assessment which will prove to be satisfactory in both aspects of research, competence, and originality. So it's also a major aim, both for the student and also supervisor, to present this thesis or dissertation for external assessment. So it's not only from internal, the university where the student is participating and learning, but also for somebody outside, an external, some independent external, to make an assessment which will prove it to be satisfactory in both aspects of research, competence, and originality. So that's an assessment going on, but also gives an opportunity for somebody outside the university where the student is studying to make an assessment. So in that sense, that is a really different experience for the student. You know, someone is going to look at your work who wasn't involved in your work, who is outside of the system, and who's got no real interest in you or your work, except that he has got the expertise in the area. So he's going to assess it and tell you. So this is a learning experience the student must learn, that you must be willing to put your work for assessment outside from all the other people you're working with. Now that's an important experience the student will learn, and how the student interacts with that is extremely important. How the student handles this kind of external assessment is also another learning experience, and student interaction is important. All right. Then a subsequent aim is through publication to become recognized as an expert in the field of study chosen. So this is another important student interaction experience that must come through at the end of this period of studying. That a student is able to publish and to become recognized as an expert in the field of study chosen. That he is willing to publish, and other colleagues are willing to read his work and consider him as an expert in the field of chosen study. And this experience is extremely important, and that the student is able to achieve this through the learning experience he had in the university. All right. So this is something that we have to ensure this happens, because if a student is not able to achieve this, then he will not be able to be treated as an expert in his field of study, and he will not be able to make an important contribution in terms of what he has done, and he will never be seen as an expert outside of where he is, right? So this is another next step, which is a part of the learning experience for the student. Then the achievement of a doctorate in any subject will represent a major investment in terms of time and effort. So the student will understand that I have made a very important, a major investment in terms of time and effort. So the student will have to understand that it's not a small thing. 4 years of your life is significant, you know, and it is a major investment. Therefore, students have to understand that as an important experience in terms of the investment you made and the kind of interactions you've got during that period. So that's another learning experience the student has to internalize and understand. It's not a slipshod kind of thing. It is a major investment. It's also done during a more senior period in your life. You're not young. Most of the time when students come to PhD and all that, they're already in their 20s, in their late 20s, early 30s. So that's the time when you can't afford to give up in terms of your life. So if you are giving that up, you must be able to get something good and useful for yourself and the community. So that's a very important learning experience that students have to understand and internalize. Then rarely is the process complete in less than 3 years, and there is no guarantee of a successful outcome. This is a major problem. In a PhD or in a research, there is no guarantee of a successful outcome. Nobody guarantees that you will get a PhD. So this is somewhat frightening sometimes, that it's a process complete in less than, seldom you can complete in less than 3 years. Although now things are improving with the advance of technology and the speed at which you can get information, speed at which you can read things, this is slowly being shortened to maybe 2 years or 2.5 years. But still, it's a process that takes a substantial amount of time, and there's no guarantee of a successful outcome, and students have to understand that. You're not going into thinking that I'm guaranteed to get a PhD, and they have to understand that why that guarantee is not there, because of this balance between time and quality. If they understand that there is this strong balance between time and quality, then they will understand why you might not get a successful outcome unless you achieve certain level of quality at the end of it by the time prescribed. So the other major thing we need to talk about in terms of student experience, student interaction, is to reduce the frequency of failure occurring is an important role of the supervisor. So supervisors have an important role in reducing the frequency of failure occurring. So if you are an experienced supervisor and you are also a dedicated supervisor and you're also a knowledgeable supervisor in many areas in the field that you're supervising, you will ensure and try to reduce the frequency of failure. That if you supervise 30 students, even one student failing is something that you wouldn't want to have. You would like to get them through unless extreme circumstances or what, you wouldn't want them to complete. Although there is no guarantee of successful outcome, as a good supervisor, as part of a good learning experience of student, you want to make sure that the frequency of failure occurring is an important role for the supervisor to reduce, that you will try to reduce this frequency of failing. Alright, so that's an important student interaction thing. The way the student interacts with you is also to ensure that the frequency of failure occurring is reduced as much as possible. Right? The other learning experience student interaction that I thought is important is getting a deeper understanding of research, which will come from considering the process by which research is conducted and from embarking upon an actual study. So students, when they do a research PhD work, they get a deeper understanding of research, and this is where I say the philosophy of research, why research is done, why it's mysterious that both people who are doing the research, both the supervisor and the student, don't really know the answers yet. They are trying to find the answers together, and it will come from considering the process by which research is conducted, that you know the process of doing the research and you're also doing an actual study. The first time you go out there and do an actual study by using the science that we talked about, the process we talked about, and the approaches that are needed to achieve a proper study. So this is what we mean by the learning experience, the student interaction that's expected from a PhD supervision. Right? Any other points here? Any other issues? Anybody wants to raise anything? Anybody has got some things for me to look at? All right, let me look at the chats. So you have a chat here from Dr. Samsul Barin Zaib. Hi Prof, there are issues on handling supervisee that appointed as GRA for research grant, where we have to complete the grant on time. Therefore, most probably we have to spoon feed them to do this and that, and push them to follow our research activities. What is your opinion, Prof? Yeah, we often get students on these graduate research assistant schemes where we get grants. I agree with you, and we have some specific time to finish these grants, and often that because of that the supervisors are pushing the students to complete it, and you tell the students, do this, this is what I want you to do, because that's how I can get the project done. That is fine, but at the same time you also make sure the student is learning what he's doing. He's not just following, that the student gets a better understanding of what he's doing, because we don't want PhD students to end up people who are just technicians. You're not a technician. A PhD student is not a technician. He's not a research assistant. A PhD student will eventually be an independent researcher, and if he doesn't get that skill to do independent research, then the program has somehow failed in doing that. Although this process of getting GRA and all is fine, but you still have to ensure the student is learning the ways of doing it, and he understands the scientific process, and he also gets to do the research independently. ask him to do the analysis. How will you do this analysis? You don't just give him all the analysis. Okay, do this analysis this way. If you're only instructing the student, then I think that's not fair to the student, because the student will not end up becoming a good researcher in the end. He will always look for instructions. How do I do this? What will be the best approach to choose? He's looking at others. He would not be able to sit down by himself, figure out things. So that's important. So I would suggest that people who got GRAs or research grants take an extra effort to ensure that students know what they are doing and why they are doing it, not just following. That they understand the process, and therefore they are able to learn research and not just take instructions about research. Learning research and taking instructions of research are two different things, right? So we need to ensure that that doesn't happen. All right. So that was one point that was raised there. All right. So where are we now? So we have done that. Learning experience, student interaction we have done. So now we are going to go to the next one, context and supervising skills and levels. So when you're talking about supervising skills and levels, we are always asking, what is success in the supervision game? How do you say that you have successfully supervised, that you are, as a supervisor, have succeeded? So often we want to be recognized as having done the job well. We've succeeded in doing a job, and this job is not an easy job, because you are dealing with something that's not clear. It will never become clear until the work is done and completed. And throughout the process, both the supervisor and the student are struggling to find out what is going on. What is the truth here? We are struggling, Both the supervisor and the student are continuously struggling with trying to find out what's going on here, and trying to understand how you explain something that's going on there. So then what is the success game here? So the success often is seen in terms of formal recognition that examination requirements have been satisfied. So here it means that formal requirement, what is required for you to pass, your dissertation. So this is again another issue, because in all examination or thesis, you don't have to get the highest point. You just have to clear some minimum level. If the student clears that, he passes, and he will get the PhD as the same person who clears with 100% or 95% or whatever. As long as he clears the requirements, he passes and he gets the PhD. That's why the minimum standard set for clearing is quite high. The reason is because the student will be a researcher, will be judged as a researcher based on the recognition that the examination requirements have been satisfied. Right? Recently, you heard a controversy in University Putra, Malaysia, where they say they produce over 400 PhD students, and people were complaining, how did they produce so many PhD students? Is this correct? Can you really produce so many graduate students, so many PhD students over time? So the issue is still, excuse me, whether the examination requirements have been satisfied. And if those examination requirements are satisfied by the team of people who were appointed, then that's right, they have cleared that, and they have succeeded in producing a PhD student. And there's no way of telling that, you can't be doing this, or you've done something wrong. But if that examination requirements are not good, the standards are very low, then that's another issue. But if these examination requirements have been there, and students have gone through the examination requirements and fulfilled those requirements, then it's not an issue. So this formal recognition, the examination requirements have been satisfied, is important, and making sure that these requirements are somewhat stringent, not sloppy, because it doesn't matter in the PhD level whether you got 100% or you got 60%. As long as you clear requirements, you are the same, you get the same PhD degree. Right? So because of that, it's important that the formal requirements are well spelled out, and people who are doing those examinations make sure that those things are met. right? So that's part of the context supervising skills and levels. The second one is when dissertations and theses are displayed in the libraries. For example, when you finish up, when a student finishes up, and you have been a supervisor, the dissertation theses are displayed in libraries. Success often means also that the student is satisfied that his own standards have been met. Students also get a satisfaction in seeing that they have met certain standards. Students also have some sense of standards. So when they find that their thesis is out in the library, they feel proud that it is there and people can read them. And they feel that I have contributed to a certain level of standard, that I'm happy for others to read this thing. And so that when that level of satisfaction is achieved, then you have done a good supervising. Students themselves feel happy that they are able to reach that level and got the dissertation to be there, and they are not ashamed that others are going to read the dissertation and say that how did this piece of work got through, and they will be maligned and say that you didn't do a good job. So this idea that dissertation thesis will be out there in public display also shows that students themselves must be satisfied that his own standards have been met. And that's where the supervisor need to guide the student to feel that you need to understand what is a good standard. Students have to come to a level to be able to understand what is considered a good standard by the time they graduate. And that's what is going to carry them through in how they are going to supervise students in the future. So that's another key thing we need to think about, when you're supervising students, and that this context is carried upon. So when you talk about the main factors that affect the research progress of graduate students, what are the main factors that affect the research progress of graduate students? In a number of studies done in many parts of the world, when you ask graduate students what affects their research success or their ability to graduate, often the key is subject chosen. What is the topic or subject you have chosen to study? And this is why a lot of supervisors spend a lot of time trying to get the student to really frame the problem properly. What is the problem? What is the subject you've chosen to study? This is a very important part and a very important factor in which affect the research progress of graduate students. If this is not chosen properly, if this is not framed properly, the student will be evolving for months and years before he can get forward, because the problem itself is not being chosen properly, right? So the subject or the problem that you are trying to study has got to be chosen well, and this is where the role of the supervisor and the student plays in. It's not that the student comes and says, I want to do this study. Well, you can want to do this study, but is it a subject that is worthy of study? Is it a subject that's going to help you to finish this work? So this is extremely important, subject that's chosen. Then the other major area that ensures whether the student research progress takes place or not is the research design. How do you design the study so that you can do proper science with it, that you can collect the data you want, you can put it through a proper analysis, and then you can write up a proper discussion of it based on the theory or a framework that you have got. So that the research design is extremely important. How is the data is going to be collected, who are going to be respondents, under what context is research going to be undertaken. So that's extremely important, the research design, and many of them struggle with the research design as well. So if the problem and the research design is bad, the student is going to have a tough time, and the student is going to struggle to make research progress. They may take a lot more time, or they may even drop out after a while because they're not getting far with it. So this subject chosen research design is extremely important in trying to get the student forward. The next is the quality of supervision. Quality here is a very difficult word, because what is quality? Quality is something that differs according to different people. But generally the quality of supervision here refers to that the supervisor ensures that the student has understood the scientific process, what it means to do research with science as the background, science as the basis, the scientific method, that the student understands the science philosophy of science, the scientific method. This is extremely important. I think a lot of students do take courses in research methodology, research methods, but sometimes they forget the idea about what is science. Yeah, some of them don't even understand that you don't actually prove anything. When you do research, you're not proving anything. You're actually disproving something. The philosophy of science is based on the idea of disproving something, not proving. You don't go there and prove anything in the world. You go there and disprove something from your research. The whole idea of testing hypothesis is about disproving a hypothesis, not proving a hypothesis. You don't really prove any hypothesis, you only disprove. So this idea of understanding how science works, that you are essentially trying to show that this is disproved. This idea that I put forward is disproved, and therefore I succeed in saying that is not going to work. So this idea of disproving something is fundamental to the science approach of science. So that comes from the quality of supervision, how the supervisor is able to make sure the student understands the scientific process. Therefore he ends up being a scientist in the end, because he understands what it means to prove something in science. Whatever you do in science, you are not proving, you're only disproving something. So the moment you disprove something, then you're saying that is not true, and therefore you look for something else. If that is not true, then there must be something else working. What is that? So that philosophy of science that gets you to think in ways to understand the world by the process of disproving, and that comes from the quality of supervision the supervisor is supposed to provide. Then we are talking about quantity of supervision. How often do you supervise student? How often the supervisor is available to the student? And how often the student takes the trouble to see the supervisor? Some students specifically choose to stay away from supervisors. They say, oh, supervisor didn't call me, supervisor is not following me, I'm happy. Which is a very sad case, because supervisors are not going to chase you. Supervisors are not going to come after you. You are the one who is supposed to take the effort to go and see supervisors and be there to tell the supervisors, I'm interested in learning from you. And supervisors will not threaten you or push you, because you're an adult. By the time you do postgraduate work, you're an adult. You are a person who can think for yourself to a large extent. You know what you want, and you know why you're there. So the quantity of supervision depends on the student so much. How the student takes the trouble to meet the supervisor more often and tries to learn as much as he can from the supervisor through this quantity of contact with the supervisor. The others are more like external things, such as the ability of funds. Sometimes students don't have the funds, so they're not able to complete the project, or they are doing too much teaching or other activities, so they are not able to finish on time. They're running too many tutorials in the university or what, so they take more time than normal. Or they're spending too much time writing papers, they're not able to finish up the research. They're attending conferences very often, and own level of motivation is not high if the student is not very motivated. And also depends on own abilities of students, how much abilities they have. So these are the key areas, the main factors that affect research progress of graduate students. And we are supposed to, as supervisors, we are supposed to see which of these problems affect our students, so that we can do something to ensure that the student ends up finishing and becoming a good researcher. So that's that part of it. All right. And then the last part I want to talk about is to maximize the probability of timely and successful completion of a PhD thesis. We want to maximize the probability of timely and successful completion of PhD thesis. It requires identification as soon as possible of research topic with high potential quality. A lot of students come into a campus and spend almost a year or two just trying to get a topic, and this is really a serious problem. I find students struggling for more than a year, telling I'm still trying to get my research problem going, and I'm still not getting that. And after a year or two, they still have difficulty focusing it, and then they miss the deadlines, and finally they are asked to leave because they are not able to prepare the proposal defense in time, or the proposal that they prepare is not of high quality to succeed. So we need to maximize probability of timely and successful completion of PhD thesis, and this requires the identification as soon as possible of a research topic with higher potential quality. So here's where the researcher and the supervisor is extremely important. Of course, some students are lucky that supervisors come out with a topic and they tell the student, go and work on this topic. I'm interested in this area, you work on it. But they're not telling that I'm going to tell you what to do, but you please go and work on this. And then the student at least gets a chance to start on a topic which has got some high potential quality because the supervisor identified it. That in some sense is a lucky student because the supervisor has identified a topic of high potential quality, and there's always a chance that this is going to be successful because the supervisor, through his own experience and through his knowledge in the area, has identified this as a high potential quality topic and is giving it to the student, please go and do this. But he's not going to tell the student how to do it. This is very important because the moment you tell somebody how to do it, then it's no more research, proper research training. It is more like some research assistant working for you. That's not what is intended in supervision, graduate supervision at least. So again, we need to look at this, and some students are not able to get good topics, especially if there are a large number of students coming to do a PhD. So many of them do not have really a solid background in their early years in training them to think of research, and but they meet the requirements to be admitted to a graduate program, and they are struggling to get a research topic going. So this is where the supervisor can be important in his knowledge and his experience and his capabilities to share a topic that he thinks that can be done by the student and get the student going onto it, and therefore achieve some quality out of it. Right? Okay, so where are we now? So graduate student learning, so we are there. I think I've done that. Where are we now? Okay, so I've done this part, contact, supervisory skills and levels. Any questions on this? Any issues? Anybody has got any issues or something they want to raise about this? Anybody has a chat or something that they like to talk about? So I'll give you 5 minutes to stretch your legs or what, and think about what I've talked so far. And if you think all this makes sense, if you think all this may help you to get a better chance of supervising students better and ensuring greater success in the way you supervise, and then we are going somewhere. So anybody has any questions or anything to say up to this point? Okay, so I have got one question here now from Mazra Malik. Hi Prof, can you share your insight on how to become an effective supervisor? All right, so Mazra Malik has asked me, can you share your insight on how to become an effective co-supervisor? So yeah, there's another issue. Maybe I didn't really talk about this, the fact that there are these issues about co-supervisors. As I told you, in some cases, young people are matched together with senior professors sometimes to co-supervise students. And it's also a training ground for co-supervisors to learn the art of supervision and how do you do it. And often younger lecturers come with good methodology. Their methodology is strong. They have been exposed to more recent work and teaching that's going on in the universities where they come from. They usually have strong methodology, but they might not have enough experience or philosophy of research or how to actually do the research effectively. But they're good in methodology. Young people are always have an edge in terms of the techniques of research and the methodology. So the co-supervisors, I think one of the good things the co-supervisors could do is helping in students in trying to understand what kind of methodologies can be used in research, what is new out there, I can share with them some of these ideas and how these methodologies can be applied in the research they want to do. And also they can be an important source of motivation for researchers, because as young lecturers, you haven't forgotten your time as graduate students. It is still very much in your mind and very much in your experience, what you have gone through, how you actually maneuvered your way through, how you worked at it, and what challenges you faced. You would be a good mentor for graduate students, because you are very much the experience is very much still with you. Older people sometimes forget this. Older professors who have already achieved enough, they tend to forget this sometimes, and may be sometimes a little bit harsh, and not understand what the student is going through, because they have somewhat forgotten their years as graduate students and how they learned along the way. But I think one of the most important things about being a good supervisor is, one, taking responsibility. You must take responsibility for the students you're supervising. You have an important role. That's why I said responsibilities. Responsibilities are very important, because the students are going to spend a substantial part of their life in trying to complete research, a degree. It's got a significant value, because these people are not people who are just ordinary workers or technicians. They are going to make some significant contribution in society in terms of how they influence others whom they are going to teach, or in areas of research they're going to contribute. So the responsibility to make sure that this group of people get the things right and they are able to understand what they're doing is extremely important. So this sense of responsibility must be very strong. And the other thing is, one has to be kind. At the same time, one has got to be able to ensure that standards are met. You cannot be kind to the point that you are willing to let go standards. As I always say, quality is very important in a high level research. This time and quality is always a challenge. You want to finish on time, but at the same time, it's not only time, you also need to have quality. And that responsibility of maintaining that quality is extremely important. And also, you have to be pretty good motivators. You have to keep motivating the students. Do not demotivate them. Don't tell the students you're silly, or you don't know how to do these things, you're useless, or that is not a way to go. The way to go is that still there are ways of learning, there are ways of finding out this, there's a ways you can get over this. Providing that motivation is extremely important, and always being there to help the student when he is really in trouble. When a student is really hit a ceiling or hit the wall, he cannot seem to be making any progress. The supervisor becomes very, very important to say that, listen here, this is not the end. There's a way out of this. That's extremely important as a supervisor. And I think that particular role is extremely important, to be a continuous motivator to the student and to help the student when he is in real trouble, in the sense that he has found that he's not able to move forward, he's hit a wall. And that's the time a supervisor should come forward and be able to do something, and not leave the student to vanquish in agony, and therefore reach a point where they might drop off and leave. And that's a waste, because all graduate students reach that point where they hit a wall and they feel that it's a losing game. It's not going to give me any value. Why am I wasting my life on this? We all reach that point. These kinds of the camel breaking the back point is there for all of us at some point. This is where the supervisors need to come and say that, no, that's not it. Take a break, go and do other things for a while, and come back. Things will be okay, and we will talk about this. We can cut this. We can solve this problem. All right. So that motivation, that mentoring must always be there as a good supervisor, providing quality, at the same time also being able to provide that human part, because we are dealing with people, human beings. We have feelings, we got issues, we got problems, we got various psychic in us, and so that part is extremely important in providing that, and trying to make sure that these people you supervise also will become good human beings out there. They will be able to contribute in a positive way to everybody that they take on responsibility in future. So that is my take on that, in terms of saying that who what when you say insights on how to become an effective supervisor, a co-supervisor also. So that role you can play as a co-supervisor when the students run into a problem with the main supervisor, to show that you have got more experience because you have gone through the process more recently. Therefore, you remember the kind of challenges you face. So and then also maintaining quality. Co-supervisor can help a lot in maintaining the quality of methodology, which because of your more recent exposure to good methodology, you can help student to maintain that. All right. Okay. So where are we now? Any other chats? Okay, that's all. All right. So now let's go to the last part. What is now graduate student responsibility and learning outcome? What are the student responsibilities here? The students also have got some responsibilities in general. So graduate student responsibility and learning outcomes. One is, in general, the supervisor should get the student to define objectives at each stage of his work. So if you say, what is it to be a good supervisor from a supervisor angle, the supervisor should always get the student to define objectives at each stage of his work. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? So get the student to always define objectives. What is your objective here? You said, I'm going to spend next week reading this article. Then I say, what is the objective of reading this article? And next week I'm going to spend reading these 5 articles. Why? What's the objective of these articles? Let them define that objective at each stage of his work, so that he knows why he's doing something and how that is going to link up to his potential to complete his thesis. So that's a very important part of a supervisor should do. Always get the student to define objectives for each stage of his work. Second is, you must check to see that those objectives are met. So when you set objective, you got to make sure those objectives are met. You cannot just say, oh, I set objective, and after that you don't check whether did you meet those objectives. So if you say that I'm going to read these 5 important papers before I start my writing of the problem, you got to check on to see that those objectives are met. Did you read the 5 papers? What did you gain out of the 5 papers? Tell me something about it. So the supervisor has got to take this proactive step in discussing with the student. That's where the learning experience, the transformational experience, the student understands what it takes, to set objectives and meet those objectives. So that's very important for, in general, supervisors should do. And then the other part is, you must verify with student that his work is of the right standard. So we need to, as supervisors, we always need to verify with the student that his work is of the right standard. So if you find that the student is not reaching some standards, so it's the moral duty of the supervisor to tell, this is not up to mark. We need to spruce up. We need to go higher. And this is very important because some supervisors don't have the moral courage to do that sometimes. They let the student go on, and then you're not telling the student, no, you're not cutting it. You're not getting there. You're not reaching the standard that's required for you to clear the minimum standard expected. So you have to verify the student with the student that his work is of the right standard. Let me say, okay, this is good. This seems to cut it. So that interaction has to take place with the supervisor, because you cannot, in the end, let the student keep going, and then in the end you find that, what is this? There's a lot of problems here. How did the student reach this level? We cannot allow that. We cannot allow a situation where a student has gone to a level where he's already writing a dissertation and people come around and say, how did he get through? How did he get away with this proposal defense? Well, this is a very serious problem. You shouldn't allow that. You should verify with the student at various stages that this work is of the right standard. Right standard means the supervisor knows what it takes to clear something and in its area of work. So that is important. The supervisor should be able to do this all the time. Get the student to define objectives at each stage of his work. Check to see that those objectives are met. Verify with the student that his work is of the right standard. You got to keep doing that all the time at various levels when the student has objectives. That is going to make your life easier. That's also going to make sure the student learns. That is also going to give the student the right kind of experience. and it'll lead to the right outcome in terms of producing a quality dissertation. And also it's going to make you happy as a supervisor that I'm in the process of transforming a student who came in here to do research into a real researcher, right? Then from the student side, what's the student do? The student should attempt at the outset to ascertain the supervisor's views of the staff-student relationship. So the important thing is that the student should make sure that the supervisor is happy to supervise the student in this topic. The supervisor is not someone who's just been pushed onto the student by the department or the faculty, or I was just given you as a student to supervise. And then there is no real clear understanding, what is the supervisor's views about the staff-student relationship. The supervisor should be able to tell you that, okay, I'm happy to supervise you and I'm going to take this seriously, and I believe that we will be able to produce something of good value. So the student has to, at the outset, ascertain that the supervisor's views of the staff-student relationship is good. That means the student starts with the understanding that the supervisor is serious about the work he's going to do with the student, and he's happy to supervise the student on that particular topic or whatever area he was given to supervise, and the student understands that and the supervisor agrees with that. So you need to establish that through a process of discussion and understanding what we're trying to do. So that's important for the student. That's where the maturity also comes, in terms of doing good research. The second thing what students don't do is agree with the supervisor the routine aspects of the relationship and take responsibility for the implementation. So the student should actually agree with, okay, this month I'm going to do this, all right? And the supervisor said, I'll read this and give back to you the following week. The supervisor has to do that. He cannot take something and sit on it for months and doesn't return to you. So they take responsibility for their implementation. So the supervisor and the student has to have some kind of a formal understanding that we are working together, we're trying to do what is right, and we're going to work hard at it so that we will achieve something that's good. So that has to take place also in terms of the student and the supervisor. Sometimes hard, but you have to be able to tell the supervisor, and the supervisor will be able to understand that, yes, I have a role, I need to ensure that I play my role as well in meeting deadlines and times, and so there is some kind of agreement as to what I will do and what you will do, right? So that's a relationship going on between the researcher and the student and the supervisor. That is good, that is positive, that's going to bring good outcomes as far as developing the student into a researcher. The third is that you should produce written lists of queries prior to meeting the supervisor. Always try to make a list of what is the things you are trying to ask the supervisor. When you go to see the supervisor, what are the things you're concerned about? Please write that down. Make a written list with the supervisor. If you are a student, you want to get something out, produce written list of queries prior to meeting the supervisor. Don't just drop out the supervisor and say, hi, how are you? I came to say hi, and I'm still working on my project, and and I'll keep going. Those kind of things are not going to help you. You need to produce a written list of some of the questions you want to ask the supervisor prior to the meeting with the supervisor. All right, so that's important for as a student and for you to do. The other one is you're supposed to keep written notes of meetings with the supervisor and submit copies to him. Okay, you should try and keep written notes of meetings with the supervisor and submit copies to him. This is what we discussed and this is what I understood from the meeting. And the supervisor has a responsibility to go through those things and see whether the student has got what he thinks he has got, or the student has completely misunderstood what he said. So these kinds of formal discussions and meetings will help the student to understand the process of doing research and transform the person from an ordinary graduate student into a final responsible researcher. All right, so that's D. And lastly, you must agree with the supervisor nature and timing of written material to be submitted to him. So you must have some kind of timing arrangement, supervisor, the nature and the timing of written material. For example, I'm going to give you chapter 1 at the end of this month, and I expect to get that back from you, say within 2 weeks or something. Give a reasonable time, because supervisors are also human beings, they got so many things to do. But give him a reasonable time and say, I need to get that back from you, and then I'm going to work on another chapter. And then you have a time of written material to be submitted to him, and then you can get feedback. So try as far as possible to write, which means you have to write. You have to write material that must be submitted to the supervisor, so the supervisor can know whether you're making progress, whether you are on the right track, and your transformation is taking place in terms of what time when you entered the university to do the research project, and now where you are as you keep going on the research topic. So these things are what matters, in terms of trying to get the best out of what you want, in terms of supervision, in terms of what the supervisor can do, in terms of what you can get from the supervision. So if supervisors and students are able to get these things behind them and keep an eye on these things carefully, I'm sure the learning experience will be good. The supervising experience will also be healthy and supportive. The student will be able to think of his period in the university as something that's very enriching and has made him a much more useful person in society in terms of what he can do for the area of professional training he chose to invest his life in. And he can continue to contribute for years to come as a good researcher and as a good supervisor on his own later when he supervises students as he takes up academic positions or research positions elsewhere. So that is what we are trying to do. We must understand that it's our important role to continue to produce quality humans, to keep going, to carry on what we are doing. Otherwise, we will not be able to sustain anything. Sustainability is extremely important in life, in nature, in everything we do. So unless we produce good quality students, students who have responsibilities and knowledge and a deep understanding of what they're doing, we will fail in our responsibility as academics and as supervisors. So with that note, I got to say that I hope this meeting, this workshop has been useful in terms of helping you to get a good understanding of what supervision is all about, what we are trying to achieve when you try to be supervisors, what roles supervisors are supposed to play, what role students are supposed to play, and how a mix of both finally produces a right outcome of producing a quality research, and you are able to balance the whole idea about the time it takes to do a dissertation or a thesis and the quality that's expected from the dissertation. Okay, so with that note, I can now look at some more questions. Anybody has got any questions or any issues, you can put that on the chat, and I will try and answer here. So there's one question from Swaini Muda to everyone. Hi Prof, how to overcome the language barriers in supervising, example, international students who are weak in English command, both speaking and writing? Thanks. All right. Yes, Swaini, this is a very important question. We are faced with students who come from many backgrounds. We have students coming from different parts of the African continent. We have students coming from Middle Eastern countries. For all of us, English is not our first language, and neither is Malay, right? So we are dealing with students who are going to use language which is not exactly their first language at all, and yet you are expected to perform at a very high level in using the language. And this will continue to be an issue in supervising. That is why we try very hard to use editors and language training to provide them, because they still need to get some skill to be able to read the papers. Many of the papers will still be in English, and they also need to communicate with us as supervisors, and we need to get them up to some mark. So I think trying to get them to get some language courses and bring them up to some mark is important, because without that it will be very difficult to communicate. But more important thing is that we have to ensure that even if the language command is weak, they do not fail on the techniques of what is good research. They get a good understanding of research philosophy, research tools, and what it takes to do research. That is irrespective of language. That is a core that must be passed down, irrespective of language issue or whatever. Whatever language a person speaks is not the issue, but that he understands what is the thing called science, what it means to do research, how research is to be done. That thing he understands it, even if he understands his own language, in his own mother language or whatever, that's not the issue. That he understands what this is all about. but it is always important to improve their capacity to use English, because English is the medium through which we are teaching, or we are using them to be trained. Then it's important for them to get some level of command of the language, and therefore the university should help and also encourage students to take courses to bring them to some mark, and encourage them to read more, ask them to keep reading. As they keep reading papers and as they keep talking to us, they will improve, and over time they'll become better. I have many graduate students from the Middle East, graduate students from Indonesia, graduate students from other parts of Africa who are not natively or not even using English as a second language. Some are from French-based African countries, but they have learned and picked it up and are able to do research and understand the research process and contribute, in contributing to value in science. So this is what we are trying to do. So I agree, this is an additional problem we have, when students come without sufficient knowledge of the language. But I think supervisors will have to also ensure the students take the trouble, or they also encouraged or pushed to do some of these things. Tell them, I have difficulty understanding you, you have to do something, because otherwise it's very difficult for us to do this thing together. So that we got to be honest with them and help them out. All right. I hope Shahini, you got the answer to that. All right. So I think we have reached the point. We are now at the question and answer session. Anybody has important questions to ask, to share if your own experience from supervising students, and how you feel that how you could do better in the future, and how you might be able to contribute as a better supervisor, and also face how you handle some of the problems you're facing. All right. So are there any questions? Please do put some chats or raise your hands if you want to say something. I think our coordinator there can unmute your mic if there's a need to. All right. So I hope this about 2 hours of discussion of this workshop has helped you to understand what supervision is all about, what it takes to do good supervision, why it's important to do the right thing in supervision, and what we understand by doing graduate research work, and where it will all end. In the end, we are producing an independent, capable researcher who understands the scientific method and is able to do that throughout his life. Wherever he is, wherever he's going to be, he'll be able to do his job effectively. And also it's important that we show some kindness, because in the world, without kindness you cannot achieve anything. As a supervisor, you have to show some kindness, but the kindness doesn't mean that you don't make sure the student doesn't learn what he's supposed to learn, right? I hope this workshop has been useful, and if any of you all need to get in touch with me for anything, you can always use I think you can use my email, Kuparan at either uum.edu.my or kuparan@gmail. I think the organizers will be able to give you my email so that you can contact me and have some discussions if you need to. So I hope this is a very useful workshop, and opened up some viewpoints to you, and that you will be able to do a good job wherever you are, and help the students and also help the nation to improve and get going. We all have a job to do, and we try to do it well, and we hope for the best, and that God will look after us if we do our job well. And so look forward to seeing you all again in the next session when we run another series, and I hope you enjoyed the session. All right. So I will pass that thing to the organizers. Who is the organizer? The organizer can take over, please. Okay, so yang the organizer siapa ni? Syahrini. Oh, Syahrini. Siapa yang jaga ni? Okay. If there are any issues, you can always still ask and discuss. Otherwise, we can end the session. So I will leave my email address there in the chat, so you all can get in touch with me if you need any.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Prof. I'm so sorry because Prof. Panshari, her mic is problem.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
apart from the TSC, would like to thank you to Prof.
Yeah.
Such a great session today.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I hope we'll see Prof again another session.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I hope if people have got any questions, they can still ask if they want. Otherwise, we can end the session. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm always happy to contribute towards improving the academic and scientific community that we have. And I hope UUM will continue to supervise students well and produce a good set of PhD graduates.
Yes, okay, Prof. Thank you so much, Prof. And also thank you for all participants.
Yeah.
The slide and also the recording question we will upload on our UTLC help desk.
Yeah.
So kindly please check the website.
Yeah.
Okay.
If students, anybody wants the slides, you can give it to them. They
Yeah,
can
sure.
download them or have them. There's no problem with that. Okay.
Thank you so much,
Right.
Prof.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So see you then.
Yes, see you there, Prof.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Yeah. Welcome. Welcome to all.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof.
Yeah. Welcome. Good. Good to see you all. Yeah. All right.
To all participants, don't forget to fill in the evaluation form on the chat below. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right. See you all then next time. All the best. Take care.